Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Drew, and today we're making cocktails on tap utilizing the Micro Matic beverage station. Now the cocktail that we're gonna do today is a classic cocktail that's found in bars all over the country. It's one of the most important whiskey cocktails to have on your menu. You got it, that's the classic old fashioned. So before we get started, you need tools, right? Whenever we batch any cocktails. So these are the tools that I recommend that we use whenever we're doing that. We're gonna utilize a whisk. We need to have a measuring device, of course. A silicone measuring cup works fantastic. We need a funnel. And last but certainly not least, we definitely need a mesh strainer. And I want to talk about this for a moment or two. So the mesh strainer is really important when we're batching any cocktails that go into our Micro Matic system, because what we want to do is remove any solids, any pulp. So if you're shaking a margarita that has fresh lime juice or orange juice, you definitely want to strain that out. I would almost recommend straining that out at least 3 times before we put it into our beverage tank. Now the old fashioned doesn't have any juice in it, but I'm gonna go ahead and strain that cocktail just for good practice. So let's go ahead and let's move these tools out of the way. We're gonna place our funnel on top of our beverage tank, as well as our mesh strainer. And because of movie magic, let's go ahead and grab our cocktail. All right, so this is our old fashioned. We went ahead and combined our 2 different types of whiskey, our bourbon whiskey as well as our rye. We also have a nice little cherry vanilla syrup to add as our sugar. And I went ahead and added dilution to this. Now, whenever you stir cocktails or you're shaking cocktails, you're gonna get anywhere between, if you're shaking them, 15 to 20% of dilution, which means more water is gonna be added to that cocktail. If you're stirring cocktails like the old classic old fashioned, you're gonna add roughly about 10 to 12% or so. So we went ahead and did that math and we added that water in here because we're just pulling the tap. We're not stirring this cocktail at all. Another note for this cocktail is traditionally old fashions have bitters. Now I didn't add any bitters to this, and we're at the very end after we dispense the cocktails, because if we add bitters during the batch process, the flavor of that cocktail is gonna change over time. Bitters don't really work too well in a batch recipe unless you're batching it about an hour before your service time. So for this cocktail, we're gonna add bitters at the very, very end. So let's go ahead and pour it into our beverage tank. Move our tools. Now something that I want to touch on is this really beautiful Micro Matic beverage tank. Now this tank is a 5-gallon tank. Our recipe is 1 gallon. Now with a 5-gallon tank, you can do roughly 200 old fashions in one batch. That's fantastic when you think about it as an operator, creating the same consistent cocktail for your guests. And as a bartender, you're gonna be able to pour these out in record time, do a quick garnish, and then they're out the door. So it's a win-win. Also what I love about this tank is NSF certified stainless steel. The couplers are in the system as well, so it's very sterile. It's a fantastic piece of machinery, especially when you think about longevity and investment into your craft cocktail program. One other thing to note is Micro Matic, they're absolutely geniuses. They created this really beautiful mixing stick. And now this mixing stick, we're gonna drop into our tank. When we put our tank into the draft system, we have this nice magnetic base. That base is gonna stir this cocktail for us for the entire length of time the cocktail's in this tank. So if we have 200 old fashions, it's gonna be mixed and stirred repeatedly until the tank is completely empty, and I think that's absolutely amazing. Back in the day, you had to take a bartender or a bar back and put them in the cooler and have them shaking kegs during your service. With that, you don't have to at all. So after we add it, we're gonna go ahead and put the lid on. And there you have it. We have an old-fashioned batch and ready to go on tap. Let's go ahead and hook it up. All right, we just poured an old fashioned from the Micro Matic beverage station, so now it's time to garnish. So we're gonna grab our cherry and our orange peel. Cherry inside, nice little orange peel. But we're gonna kick this up a notch and we're gonna set something on fire. So we have our orange oil and our bitters that we talked about earlier, and we're gonna do some nice aromatics right over top of the cocktail. And there you have it. We have our classic old fashioned. Cheers.